Thank you. And of course, I have so much material that I want to get through, so I'm gonna try to clip through some of the initial piece and get to why I think you guys are here, and then hopefully we'll still have some time for some conversation. We've been talking about preparing for the future, and certainly accessibility of web content has to be part of that reality. And yet, part of that reality is we don't yet have web standards in place for cognitive issues. They're working on it, but it's been something that's been in progress for a very long time now. So our group, I direct two groups that deal with accessibility. One is WebAIM, which is a technical group for developers of web stuff and accessibility solutions, as well as the National Center on Disability and Access to Education. But we've been looking at how we can take information we already have, some data that we already have, and just analyze it in some different ways to see if maybe we can get some information that would be useful in the field. And this is what you guys are going to get. You're going to get the first blush of a direction that we have just started to go. What I can tell you is that the last 2 years, in fall of 2016 and again in 17, we did a nationwide sample, and I'll describe what that sample looks like. But now we want to see if we can extend that. And of course, this approach has a number of limitations, of certainly one of which is it's very poor form to collect your data and then say, now what can our research questions be? We really were grounded in research questions before, and I'm going to kind of go through some of that. But in our time today, this is what I want to get done. I want to talk to you about the research context and the methods for the main study of the 2 years of web accessibility, the national sample that we did. I'm going to just touch on, when I say select results, it's really going to be one of the main results that we found in that main study. Then I'm going to flip, and I think you need that for context, but I want to make this point clear. That is just web accessibility writ large. That's not specific to cognitive issues. Then I'm going to flip and say, okay, now let's look at the data a little differently to see if we can tease out anything that might have something to do with some trends in cognitive disabilities. And then hopefully, like I said, some discussion. All right, now I trimmed a lot of information out. I had about 8 slides that basically set forth what I consider the research context. These are premises, though. First off, people are online. I think we all agree with that, and including those with disabilities. We're talking about 27 million people with disabilities, and of that, a significant portion are folks that have cognitive and learning disabilities. Digital accessibility is important for our participation in society and employment and education and everything, and we want everyone to have that access. I think we can also, I think a lot of you guys that are here are probably here because you're interested in data on web accessibility, and maybe you've already poked around at it. I had numerous slides talking about the research that's gone on to date, and we have a lot of it. A lot of samples, not necessarily national ones, but that look at error rates across pages of somewhere between 30 and 90% over the last, I'm going to say, about 8 years of pages in the sample. So in the research that's been done, we're not doing so good in terms of web accessibility, as well as the possibility that web accessibility might actually be getting worse over time instead of better. The predominant theory is that the web is becoming more complex, and it doesn't lend itself as easily to just simple fixes. Okay, so what was our approach? I just want to remind you we're WebAIM, we're in Utah at Utah State University, and we are housed in one of the University Centers for Excellence in Developmental Disability. And in fact, here in Colorado, it's, what is the name of the UCED here in Colorado? JFK Partners. Okay, so that's like parallel groups. There is a UCED in every state and territory. And if you don't know about the USAID system, it's an amazing national network, and it has a mission to provide leadership, to advise not only federal, but state and local policymakers, promote self-determination, independence, productivity, and full integration of individuals with developmental disabilities. This movement and this set of centers was initiated by JFK 2 weeks before he was assassinated. So it's been going on for a long time. I'm just so honored to be a part of it. But as a USAID, we have a shared context that I thought would be really interesting for this kind of research. Not only is every USAID housed at a university, but they're also kind of part of the overarching state government. So it seemed to me that we had this perfect combination of a way that we could take a nationwide snapshot and look at different things, including how do the disability advocates, AKA the USAIDs, do, and how do universities do, how are state governments doing? So it was just a perfect way to sort of frame this. Okay, I'm going to tell you the research questions really quick that grounded us. To what extent are these three entities using web content that conform to current standards, current web accessibility guidelines? Are there relationships between them? So if we had an area where a USAID is particularly strong or a university is particularly strong, are we seeing some wonderful contamination of the data in the rest of the state? As well as do we see subsets of the success criteria that are showing us that there are some patterns of web either accessibility or issues, because that might help us target technical assistance and things like that. But of course, we're not going to have time I'm not going to be able to share or a lot of that stuff with you, but if you're interested, please do reach out to me because I could talk about this for a long time. Okay, here we go, methods. Okay, so we've got those three entities, the USAIDs, the hosts, and the state governments. And we gathered, there are 67 USAIDs, but we gathered 62. It's a long story. We had some USAIDs like Guam, the territory of Guam, when we were collecting their website was like just offline. It was just down. We had others where there were just some problems with some pages and contaminations of the sample. But anyway, so we had 62 USAIDs, 52 host universities that are paired with those USAIDs, and 62 state governments. For each of those, so we've got these different numbers of organizations, and the data that we have, we can look at by organization, or we can just pull them all together and look at one big fat thing, which is kind of what we did. So we're going to be talking today really about 176 organizations that go across the nation. But what did we do to gather the sample? Well, we took the 176. And we decided, we need a nice big fat random sample. So we spidered using some freeware out there, engine that collects, it collected 250 pages. And it was the regex filter, if any of you guys happen to know what that is. So we had the 176 organizations. We spidered 250 pages for each of them, and for each of those pool of 250 pages, and using a random generator, we selected 13 random pages. Now 13 is a very strange number, but that's because we also added the home page. So we ended up with a sample for every unique organization of 14. If there was any time when we got an error on any page, we just did a replacement from that pool, of course, which is now 236 pages instead of 250. I mean, you can figure out why that math works, right? We used the WAVE tool. If any of you know that, it's a web accessibility evaluation tool. It evaluates pages one at a time. I would encourage people to go and check it out. wave.webaim.org is how you can do that. And so we used the WAVE tool to evaluate all of our pages. But what I can tell you is WAVE, just like any other evaluation metric of web accessibility, can't do everything in an automated way. You get too many false positives and false negatives. For example, you can see is alternative text present, but you don't really know, is it appropriate? But there, oops, I put myself on a timer because I wanted to be done with this section. I'm not done in 10 minutes, darn it. There are other elements that can only actually be detected with human evaluation. About a quarter of the elements that you want to look at in terms of web accessibility, only about a quarter can really be automatically detected, programmatically determinable. So we took the 15 machine discoverable errors out of WAVE, and that's all we tested. So I want to make it really clear, this is not about accessibility as much as it is about what kinds of errors were we finding on pages that were machine detectable. If you know WAVE, you understand these error icons and the error types, but here I just provide a few examples here of the kinds of errors that WAVE and many other tools will automatically detect. We also took those errors just for sake of our own internal consistency and mapped them to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines success criteria. If you know about WCAG 2.0, you know there's a bunch of success criteria. And here are the 7, there's a whole bunch of them, but we took 7 that mapped, and we actually have a mapping document. So we have the WCAG success criteria and how our elements mapped to those. This is a huge conversation in and of itself. And anyone that wants to have that, please contact me later. All right, so we performed the automated, and we performed automated searches for media files. And I personally went to every single one of those pages, launched every one of those media files to see if captioning was present. Not just is it present, but is it appropriate? Because a lot of people are having YouTube do the crazy auto caption, and it is no bueno, is what I can tell you. All right, so in terms of our analysis, we did normal things, descriptive stats, z-tests, correlation coefficients across them, which of course you guys aren't going to get, but I just wanted you to know that we were doing a fairly rigorous process here. Here are the caveats that are really critical for you to understand. If we don't have an error on a page, it doesn't mean that the page is accessible. It just means that of those 15 machine detectable errors we're looking for, none of those were present. So let's be careful that we're not making this something that it's not. One error on a page or for that success criterion was a failure of the entire success criterion. And again, 0 errors doesn't mean that it's a pass, because some of what makes it a pass would have been a manual evaluation. And you can imagine how long it would take to manually evaluate the sample size that we had. And that's why we were limited a little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna talk really quickly about our main research question, again, for the general web accessibility stuff, but it's kind of interesting. So if you look at USED's hosts and the states, you can see that they were all up in the 70s. Now what we're referring to is what percentage of pages contained errors. And you can see the average, of course, all of them is 74%. So what we're really saying in 2016 is 3 out of every 4 pages had the kinds of errors that are such low-hanging fruit that a machine can detect them. And this is not good news. And what is also not good news is that the Disability Advocacy Organization, the USED, really didn't do, at a statistically significant level, didn't do any better than anybody else. This just made me want to cry. Okay, 2017 came along, and you know what? We had a little bit of movement in some interesting directions. And let me put it together for you so you can really see the side-by-side comparison. Interestingly enough, the governments did a little worse. The others did a little better. But of course, we've got to limit this by saying this is based on our sample. And let me just tell you that what we did is we took those exact URLs and ran them again. Exactly. You know, were things changed such that there's some sampling errors maybe in, who knows, who knows. But based on this, we have a sense that our first question, which is, are they using standards? That was a big fat fail. And I can just say that, you know, what we're seeing is that most pages in this very controlled sample have basic errors, and that's quite sad. There were some subtle but positive changes found in the data that we collected this year. And then, sadly, the disability organizations, the USEDs, weren't that much more accessible. All right, so now that you've got kind of what we did, why we did it, and what our preliminary findings were, what can we learn about issues of cognitive disability? The first thing that I've got to really stress is that we really need to understand this phenomenon, because users really do have very, very different functional needs that make interpreting these data complex. So you're gonna get what we got, but interpreting it gets complicated. So let me give you some examples here. So we know that if we're looking at the WCAG success criteria, we need to look at those in some flexible ways, because where one element, so 1.1.1 is non-text content, and the success criteria says that anytime you have non-text content, you need to provide a way for the user to discover that, to perceive it. Alternative text is a perfect example of that. But we've got some users with cognitive and learning disabilities where that is actually a necessary thing. They're using some assistive technology. Maybe they're not using a screen reader like JAWS, but they're using other reading technologies, and they want to know what that non-text image is or element is. So they need to have that there. Or maybe they have, they're an individual that has some issues with distraction, so they've turned off all images. They don't want that distraction. Well, if that's important to the content, and if that alternative text isn't there, then they're losing it. So in those couple examples, that would need to be present. And if we don't have it present, it's a problem. But if a user is experiencing it just visually, and they don't need some of the assistive technology, this is not going to be an issue for them. So we don't have any unified thing saying this is good, this is bad. We have users for which this is an issue and users for which it is not an issue. Another one that I had thought about is the issue of headings. So everyone says that structural markup really is a very important thing. It helps with chunking. Some users are going to be able to experience a page visually, and if whoever put up the page inappropriately just used like a bold and an underline to note a heading, well, the fact that they didn't use markup isn't going to bother that user. But then for some other users that are disabling styles, that are using assistive technologies, it is critical for them to see the structural and semantic relationships that are on the page. So again, I just want to make the point that we don't have these unified goods and unified bads, all right? The other thing that I just want to mention is that the errors that we're talking about and the success criteria that we're going to be talking about really just may belie other issues. I'm thinking if a developer isn't thinking of the low-hanging fruit that we were evaluating, it's unlikely that they're thinking about how to develop for all users anyway. But with that said, and this is my big caveat, the thing that I really want to make sure to emphasize is that I neither want to oversimplify this, nor do I want to overstate the capacity of WAVE to detect some of these things. It's just complicated, and you guys are seeing a little bit of a pilot step into this. All right. A while ago, WebAIM looked at some issues of cognitive disability, and in fact, we have a little thing, webaim.org/cognitive. These were the 7 things that we felt were really important, and that that developers needed to do, and ways in which WAVE could assist. Developers need to develop content that's consistent, that can be transformed, that's multimodal, that has elements of focus and elements of structure, where readability and language, simple language, are considered, where there is an orientation to elements on the page, and that there are certainly error prevention, error recovery kinds of bits, and things that are compatible with assistive technology, because a number of folks with cognitive or learning disabilities are using that. With that said, what is really important to be looking at is what is happening right now in the W3C. There's a cognitive work group, COGA, and I put the GitHub URL up there if anyone wants to go look at this. And they have 9 elements. I'm not going to read them all because we're getting short on time already. But they have very clear main issues, I guess is the best way to frame it. These have not yet been translated into specific technical specifications. They had put out some draft specifications, and there was a period of some feedback. So they're kind of back at looking at some of this. Here's the rest of the 9. So you can see, and some of them really do cross where WebAIM was years ago as well. Because this is at some point in time going to end up by being kind of the industry standard. I mean, this is from the W3C. We wanted to look at how WAVE the data that we took in that 2-year sample on that main web accessibility stuff, what information could that give us about some of the success criteria? And I want to remind you guys that we had mapped those 15 programmatically detectable elements to the success criteria anyway. Now, just remember that sometimes an element is going to be necessary for an individual with a cognitive disability, and I gave you some examples of that. Sometimes it absolutely isn't. But here are some examples. So we've got success criteria 111, which is the non-text content. Interestingly enough, in the 2016 data, of course, of the over 2,600 pages, 61% of all of the pages in the sample had issues with 1.1.1, okay? But in 2017, only 47.8% had. Now, I did a big fat graphical no-no here because the change of improvement of 13.2% actually should have been below the 0, but it was messing with my space, so I just put a minus. So you just have to know it's an improvement. Yeah.
Did you provide any intervention to make that change?
Nope.
Or that's just time?
This is just time. This is just it. So it's just out there. So that's kind of nice. We were pretty happy to see that if you aggregate the USEDs, the host universities, and the state governments together, all on their own, we're moving in the right directions in ways on this one that could help people with cognitive disabilities. Okay, let's look at success criteria 222. Pause, stop, and hide. So this is the blinking and the marquee. There's got to be a way for a user to make the content stop, make it stop, So for a variety of reasons. But, another big bad no-no, all of the axes should have been on the same scale, but they aren't, or you would have seen something this big. But in the 2016 data, 0.04% of our samples, but it was still, we're still talking about 98 pages, the pages that had the blinkings and the marquees and all that kind of stuff. They were not implemented appropriately. And in 2017, that was reduced by half. So again, that's movement in a direction that we would want to see. With everything you can say about sampling error and all that kind of stuff, we hope this isn't a spurious result, but it's moving in a direction that we would want to see. Let's look at another one. How about success criteria 2.4.4? That the purpose of the link is in context, that that a user isn't getting to the more and the click here, and because certainly for those with cognitive disabilities, then that forces them to go often back out into the paragraph to remember what it is that they're going to. So in 2016, 53.9% of the pages had problems with that. And by 2017, only 47% did. So again, we improved by 6.8%. This is all a direction that we are wanting to see. And I am just going to do, this is the last one that I wanted to show you, headings and labels. And again, remember that for a user that is discovering the page visually, the fact that they don't have markup is going to be a non-issue for them. They're not going to care. But other users with cognitive disabilities are absolutely going to need that markup. But check this out. This just made me ecstatic. So a small number, 8.6% of the pages in 2016 had problems with their headings, with labels associated with topic purpose. And by 2017, it was 0.9%. So that really was improved. Minus, we improved it 7.6%, I guess is what I can say. So now I just sampled through these, because remember I told you I had so much information and we only have 30 minutes, and what can I really say? But my point is that in every success criterion that we tested, all of the ones that we would predict would affect those with cognitive disabilities were a little bit better. So if you think about that main data of the 2016-17 web accessibility, it wasn't uniformly better. Governments got worse. But here, when we're starting to think about it by feature, for this group of users, maybe things are getting a touch better. But again, it's complicated. So I'm going to show you why maybe we need to be thinking about this in some different ways. So this is just 2016 data. And it is presented by success criteria, like 1.1.1, blah, blah, blah. And the different colors are the different entities. So you can see here, the reason that I put this up is that different groups perform wildly differently in how this manifests as a problem. So we've just got a lot of stuff that we need to think through. And it is already almost 4:15, so, but I left at least, you said 4:25. Right, at the absolute latest. So we have, at the absolute latest, we have 10 minutes for me to hear the things that you're thinking about. And I'm hoping that can shape how our group is even thinking about approaching this. Or I can share more information, because I certainly have a lot of it. Anything that this is bringing up for anybody in particular?
Paper on this? Something to read?
A
Access the paper on this and on your website?
There's not one on the website, but I can tell you that we are in the midst of preparing some manuscripts to go out for publication. So, but we do have, other presentations about this, and I'm happy to share the PowerPoints with those, so. And if anyone knows of a journal that would be good for this kind of information, please let me know. This is all such a weird niche kind of area. It's hard to find folks that are interested in this. But anyway.
Anybody who operates a website, which we do,
Yeah.
should pay attention to these sorts of things.
Yeah, one would hope. Okay, well, yes.
What do you ascribe the improvement to based on?
First off, we have to absolutely understand that, and we're going to keep doing this every year. We have to understand that it's always possible. We've just got flat out sampling error. But I think that there is just greater awareness out there brought about because of pressure. There's greater litigation. There's, I mean, I don't know what worlds you guys are operating in, but I keep hearing, oh, so-and-so had an OCR complaint. Oh, so-and-so got contacted by NFB's lawyer. Oh, so-and-so, And that is creating its own little maelstrom, right? So I think that awareness may be helping to push organizations to get their house in order a little bit. But I'm not sure. I mean, I guess that's what I would maybe like to think. I don't know, Clayton, you might have an opinion.
I was just going to ask if you could put that slide where you had the kind of comparative data.
You mean the crazy one, this one?
Right?
Yeah.
And I apologize, I wanted to be here at the beginning.
Yeah.
So they should know, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be fair to say?
Yeah.
This is 2016.
That one.
What would can you sketch what this might be like for 2017?
We're actually right, yes, I could. And it's about, I mean, it's not the same, but there is the same crazy variance
So
by
it's
type.
Suddenly all the USAIDs woke up, and that's what.
No. And in fact, I'm going to go way back to show you this. Whoops. Okay. This isn't by type. This is everyone smashed together. But the USAIDs were not appreciably different than any other group. And, that's just not good when that is the percentage of pages in the sample with errors that are that low-hanging fruit, machine discoverable. Again, 3 out of every 4 pages. Let's see, I'll come right back to you. You had a...
Could you show the graph that was showing errors going from about 50-some% to 40-some%? It was one of the, I think it was the second of the
Let's
3
see,
bar graphs.
okay. This one? Okay. Link.
So this is the level A criteria. And
Yeah.
if I understand the graph correctly, you're saying basically, for rounding purposes, in 2016, 2017, about half the pages you looked at still had a level A error in
Yeah.
this success criterion.
Right.
So generally speaking, double A is the criterion. If you can't get to A, you're not going to get to double A. So just off of one link purpose,
Right.
half the websites are already out of the running for calling it even quote unquote accessible. Is that a fair conclusion drawn from this?
You are correct. And here's the place where we're flummoxed a little bit. We can talk about the proportion of pages in our sample, but we don't know across the sample because we didn't think to collect it this way. What's the denominator? Certainly 100% of our sample didn't have in-text links. You see what I'm saying? So we detect all these pages, over half the pages had problems with that. But is that maybe representing 90% of the pages where this element was even present?
Meaning, those who succeeded may have succeeded just by not having this particular element,
Yeah.
not because they did it
Yeah.
right.
And again, for us, we would never say that they succeeded. We can't determine where people are passing, but we can determine where people are failing. But we recognize a major flaw in our own methodology is that denominator. So right now, we're just going to have to do percentage of pages. But so captioning media, it looks like people are doing it wonderfully. Well, no, it's because there's so few pages that actually had a media file that we could look at. So I mean that's an issue for us. But you had something else you wanted to mention.
I did. I mean, one of the most important accessibility issues is keyboard access, and that's not something you can test automatically for. Have you done testing longitudinally on percentages of pages or templates that have basic keyboard access?
Well, and there are ways you can detect that, but it's just not a fully automated way. And we don't really have time to kind of walk through how Wave would get at that. But this is our first jump into some longitudinal data. Over the years, we've done this sample, and then we've done this sample, and but now we've got the start of something. We're just going to keep moving and see if some of these trends continue and get better, we hope, over time at some of our own statistical modeling, which we're babes in the woods at, I'll tell you that much.
So are you saving the pages in any way so that if you fine-tune your survey later, you can go back in time and actually compare apples to apples?
Yeah. We did not do that the first year. We did do it this second year. We're hopeful that because we grabbed the exact same URL, there's going to be changes. But the other thing that I will say is we also, and we don't have this data analyzed yet, we also grabbed using the same methodology, a completely separate sample, so that we could look at two completely random samples that are not connected, that are independent, to see if some of the same stuff is holding, but I don't have that for anybody yet. Okay, looks like I should let you all go. Boy, if anyone has any thoughts or ideas for us, we sure would like to hear it. On the face of it, here's my last two takeaway points. We're very sad with the state of web accessibility, very sad. If governments, if universities, and if disability organizations are where we're seeing that they are, this is really sad. On the other side of it, it looks like there's maybe just some buds of evidence that the kinds of things that might be helping users that have cognitive and learning disabilities might be things that are getting some traction. So it's a mixed bag. But thank you for your time, and I know it's a long day, so go fortify yourself with some, caffeine and sugar. Thank you so much.